And more specifically, I want to welcome you all to the Union Depot, this space that we're in right now. That's a sacred space for me. And it's not sacred space just because one of the best parties that's ever happened in this state happened in this room after I got elected. In my inaugural ball, were you there? Awesome. And it's not even just sacred space to me because on election night, this is where we gathered in that red cap room that Ron mentioned earlier to learn that we had actually won the election. But we did those things because it's sacred space. See, a very long time ago, my family, my great-grandparents in Paris, Texas, found themselves in an untenable situation that was unsustainable for their family. They were in Paris, Texas, and there was a big fire in Paris, Texas, that, as I understand, particularly burned down many of the black-owned homes and black-owned business in that community. That community, as I do my reading, as I do my research on Paris, Texas at that time, that community was a place in which black workers were not welcome, but black workers were the economy. And so black workers could not leave. What I understand in my reading about Paris, Texas at that time is that the Klan would patrol the edges of town at night to make sure that no one fled this horrific and horrible situation. And one day my great-grandparents got up and decided that they were going to flee with their children in the middle of the night. They got here in St. Paul back turn of the century, 1916, 1917, 1918, and a couple of years later, they had a child who they named Melvin Carter. And it's stunning to me. I wonder what it would look like to go back in time and tell them, this is Melvin Carter Sr. And then there's going to be Melvin Carter Jr. And when it gets time for Melvin Carter III, he's going to be mayor of this city that y'all found yourselves in. My family settled on a street called Rondo. I imagine some of you will see Rondo in your tours tomorrow, because this street Rondo became the epicenter, the cultural, the social, the economic epicenter of this African American community here in St. Paul. And in St. Paul, just like in Atlanta, and just like in Oakland, and just like in Baltimore, and just like in Cleveland, and just like all over the country, that thriving African American community was bulldozed to build a freeway. My grandparents owned over a half dozen commercial properties that were all taken, pennies on the dollar. 700 homes taken. In today's dollars, I've seen a study that suggests over $157 million in black wealth in St. Paul. And I have to pause, my pastor would say, I have to pause parenthetically right here and just share with you that if $157 million is the St. Paul number of a phenomenon that happened, like I said, in Atlanta and Baltimore and Oakland and all over the country, then the national number is just staggering. And I bring that around to this room that we're in to say that my grandfather found work on the railroad. My grandfather worked in this space. When you all go up and meet in the red cap room, you'll see my grandfather's name on the wall as one of the red caps who worked in this space. And it occurs to me that my great-grandparents, in being part of the labor force in Paris, Texas, that my grandfather, in being a red cap here in this building, that all of those ancestors that we look at, because I tell you that story because I'm sure it's not unique in this space. I'm probably not the only one in this space whose great-grandparents or grandparents fled racial violence in the Deep South. Is that right? I'm probably not the only one in this space whose grandparents or parents or great-grandparents worked on the railroad. Am I right? Am I in the right room? And I say that to say, it occurs to me how much wealth they were creating. It occurs to me that no one in the history of this country has ever been more proficient wealth builders than low-income workers. Amen. And that changes the dynamic because we don't have to figure out how to get low-income people to be able to create wealth. We just have to add one word to the sentence. We have to figure out ways for low-income renters and low-income workers and low-income consumers to create wealth for themselves. We've been creating wealth. There's some words on the page. I have to thank the director of our Office of Financial Empowerment, Ikram Kaliso. Give him a round of applause. And our Office of Financial Empowerment team and staff, one function of being mayor is I get to stand up here and pretend I did some stuff that I honestly don't even know what the details. And folks thank me, thanks for what you did. You're welcome. What did I do again? And many of the things that I'm about to brag about St. Paul and about our work really is led by our Office of Financial Empowerment. Who else is in the room from our Office of Financial Empowerment? Can you all just wave your hand and you guys can clap for them like they just won the final? Rapaz shared in my bio, in my introduction, the words champion for equity. And I just want to talk about that for a second. So my first year as mayor, my chief of staff looked at me and said, do you want fireworks on the 4th of July? I said, absolutely, I love the fireworks. And they said, well, it's going to cost us about $100,000 to do it. And I said, absolutely not, what's next? And as it turns out, 2 weeks later, completely unrelated, we were able to find $100,000 in our budget to launch a legal defense fund for immigrants and refugees who were being targeted by the former presidential administration. And part of the point, people would look at me and they'd say, you know, you run a whole city, it's just $100,000. And I would say, wow, just $100,000. Wow. You know, where I'm from, that's still a couple of pennies. I tell you that just to tell you, a friend of mine who I've been around in progressive politics for a very long time looked at me and said, but isn't it an equity thing? And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, black children and white children and rich children and poor children and children from every neighborhood can look up in the sky on the 4th of July and see the fireworks just the same. Isn't that equity? And it occurs to me that we're really good at one thing where equity is concerned. And that's pointing out when it ain't there. We can look at something, oh, that's not equity. We can look at a picture that ain't diverse, say, that's not equity, right? But I would guess two things. One, I would guess if I asked y'all who in this room is down with the equity movement, that every hand would go up. But two, if I asked y'all to take out a piece of paper and write your definition of equity on a piece of paper, then we'd have 100 different definitions. So you can't build something based on what it's not. We gotta know what it is. So fortunately, and Rapaz mentioned this, I went to Florida A&M University, which is the largest and livest of the historically black colleges. I have the microphone. And my business school dean at FAMU taught me a business definition of the word equity. See, when she said equity, she wasn't talking about some amorphic concept of fairness. She wasn't talking about photographs being diverse. She was talking about money. When my business school dean talked about equity, she was talking about shares of ownership of something that could accumulate wealth around, that could appreciate, and that I could pass on to my children if I decided I wanted to. When my business school dean was talking about equity, she was talking about decision-making power, because if I have equity in a company, I get to be a part of the decisions that that company makes. And that's why Rapaz was talking about our approach to engaging people in the decisions that we make. That's the only way to achieve equity. And when you put those two things together, an ability to have assets, an ability to be a self-determined and a part of the decision-making process, then you get what equity means, and that's a shared economy. If I have equity in a company and that company has a good quarter, then I have a good quarter too, right? That's what equity is. And so that's what drives our work here in St. Paul. That's why we started a college savings account to start every child born in our city with $50 in college savings accounts. We are the first city to launch a college savings accounts initiative that features automatic universal enrollment at birth. I tell moms that just means if you don't want your baby to have a college savings account, there's an application to fill out. We're the first American city to pilot guaranteed income with public funds. And that's an important one because I don't know where all of y'all are from, but I know this about you. Somebody, somewhere along the way, told you, if you give money to poor people, they'll just spend it on drugs and alcohol. Anybody not have that? Anybody not hear that? And here's the thing, I'm one of the national co-chairs of this organization called Mayors for Guaranteed Income. Nationwide, through our movement right here in St. Paul, we're on our 4th guaranteed income pilot. We have hundreds of low-income families with young children who are receiving $500 a month, no questions asked, no conditions, for a period of 2 years. As a part of our Mayors for Guaranteed Income movement across the country, we've got over 150 mayors. We've launched over 60 pilots and distributed over $225 million in unconditional cash support to low-income families across this country since the onset of the pandemic. And we're doing it all with independent evaluation, and we're distributing the dollars on debit cards. So as my kids would say, we got receipts. We can tell you what happens when low-income Americans have money. In city after city, when low-income Americans' money, I know they told you that low-income Americans are low-income because they don't know how to manage their money. They told you that, right? Well, we can tell you in city after city, when low-income Americans have money, they spend it on basic necessities. They spend it on rent. They spend it on groceries. They spend it on clothes. They spend it on their children. One of our partner organizations in Columbia, South Carolina, did a guaranteed income pilot that focused on single dads. 60% of the dollars went straight to child support. When low-income Americans have money, they spend it on their children wisely. I know they told you that low-income Americans are low-income because they're lazy and they don't like to work. And what I can tell you is that in city after city, based on the independent professional evaluation results that we're getting, that when low-income Americans have money, they don't use it as an excuse to work less, but they use it as an opportunity to work more. That surprises some people until you ask them why. You say, well, what happened? Well, I can afford to put my child in childcare. I can afford to fix up my truck or get a bus card. I could afford to be a part of our economy. Because you know there's nothing more expensive in America than being poor. There's nothing more expensive in this country than being poor in this country. And so we're able to knock down some of those myths that we've seen, that we've believed, that we've built generations of public policy on the belief that poverty is a condition of a lack of character, when in fact we're learning that poverty is just a lack of money. So if we can pick up where we left off, if we can figure out how to not help low-income folks create wealth, because they've been creating wealth since the beginning, that's what this country is. We got to figure out how to help people create wealth for themselves. And that's what makes me excited about cooperative models of ownership. Because we as low-income consumers, we as low-income renters, we as low-income workers, we talk about, I always tell folks, I always remind folks, like, look, the low-income renters in this multifamily property, they're already paying the mortgage. They're already paying all the bills. They're already paying the management. They're already paying the landscaping. They're already paying the building maintenance. They're already doing that. How do we get them paying themselves? The low-income workers in this building, they're already paying. They're already producing what's required to sustain this business. How do we get them to be able to build the wealth for themselves to be able to do that? And that's where our goal is to make St. Paul the co-op capital of the world. We like to set small goals. So we want to be the co-op capital of the world. We want to show you, we want to show your city, we want to show the world what it looks like when we flip our models of city building. And this is all I mean, and I'll get out of the way. But you know, I grew up in the black church, so I can say that 3 or 4 times. You're supposed to say, take your time. Take your time. Look, we inherited a model of city building that I think is all wrong. And that is this. When you become mayor, people say, hey, look, your most important job is public safety. And what they mean is, historically, go lock up all the young black and brown boys you can find. They say, hey, your most important job is economics. And what they mean is, break the piggy bank. So go find some business in Houston to get them to move here. Or go find some worker in Miami to get them to move here. While people right up under our nose, while businesses right up under our nose, while community members right up under our nose are struggling and could, but for the lack of some little investment, be thriving in our community. When we say our job is to build roads that people can get around, we're fine. Just bulldozing 700 homes to create a road that people can get through. And what this model tells us is that place is more important than people. What this model tells us is that, Mayor, if you build a new building and pave the roads, then you've probably been a success, no matter whether people can pay the rent or not. And what we're trying to do is just flip that model on its head. In our budget last year, we made swimming lessons free for St. Paul children. One thing that people know about Minnesota is we got a lot of lakes. We're the land of 10,000 lakes. And one of the things that I said when we did that is, all these lakes, all these destination swimming pools we have, they're useless if our children can't swim. That seems so obvious to me, but it's such an opposite approach to what we've learned about place building. And I want to tell you the end of that story about Old Rondo. I'm excited. There's a bunch of partners in this room who made it happen. We launched a couple of years ago the Inheritance Fund in St. Paul, which says to families who lost a property to build that freeway, we're going to provide. I haven't even said what we're doing yet. We provide up to $110,000 in fully forgivable financing to help descendants of Old Rondo purchase or renovate a home. So we're excited about the work that we're doing. We're excited about our cooperative work. We're excited about our local fund. Our local fund is our partnership with Nexus community partners to facilitate cooperative ownership models here in our community. We've launched it with I think first $4.5 million investment of American Rescue Plan funding. We've launched. So Taproot Collective. Anybody here from Taproot Cooperative? There we go. Taproot, give it up for Taproot. They were our first real estate investment cooperative. Nexus provided Taproot with pro bono tech assistance, helping them to incorporate in 2023. Through the local fund, we're also supporting Storehouse Grocers transition into a working cooperative. That's what I'm talking about. Which pretty soon we're gonna see a second location, right? That's right. But still, there's opportunities all over our community. And all over your community, and all over the place, for us to build partnerships, for us to build real economic engines in our community, for us to build that cycle that we know, that churn that we know that our communities have to have in order to be successful, in order to be thriving and vibrant places of the future. We believe that long-term financial prosperity just hinges on our ability to meaningfully engage residents in our local economy. We believe that when people have a stake in their community's economic success, they're more likely to invest their time, their energy, and their resources back into it. We believe in the cycle of reinvestment that has to be there to fuel sustainable growth, from sustaining minimum wage to eliminating late fines in our public libraries to launching housing initiatives like that Inheritance Fund I just shared you about. We are working hard to operationalize this understanding of equity as not some amorphic social justice word, but about dollars, about ownership, about wealth creation, about decision-making power, about the right to self-determination. These are all the words I learned in my Kwanzaa celebrations as a kid. And we believe, fundamentally, that local communities, that organizational leaders, that people like you and me can actually be the arc benders, the curve benders who help bring this future to fruition, not just in St. Paul, not just in your neighborhood, but for our whole country. Thank you so much.